What happens if we bring together the greatest chess player of all time, as considered by many people around the world, Garry Kasparov, with his very best and most celebrated game? Then we get an absolutely incredible masterpiece, which we are going to see and explore today in this video. Let's go back to the year 1999, where Garry Kasparov, playing with the white pieces, faced Topalov, who had the black pieces. If you've never seen this game before, you have no idea how lucky you are to be able to enjoy this game for the first time. All of us who have already seen it, even though we love to watch it over and over again, will never be able to feel that excitement of seeing it for the first time again. So enjoy it a lot and take away as many lessons as you can. Topalov played the Pirc defense, which at that time was not very commonly used in elite chess. Much more frequently, for example, the double king's pawn opening or the Sicilian defense were played. However, the Pirc defense was not the most popular choice at that moment. You already know that always, if the four central squares are not occupied, we should try to take control of them with our pawns. This is what we always try to do, because the center is extremely important, as you already know, and we've demonstrated it on several occasions. Knight to f6 attacking the e4 pawn, knight to c3 developing the knight while also defending this pawn, and here the most theoretical move of all would be g6. You could also go into the e5 variation, which would actually be considered a kind of Philidor defense in chess. In this case, Topalov chose the move g6. Usually the most theoretical move when we play d6 is to go for the Pirc defense. Could we possibly go into a King's Indian defense? Yes, with some nuances, but yes, it is possible. The most common approach here is actually to go into the Pirc defense. The bishop will typically be placed on g7. This pawn will be placed on g6, along with its partner on d6, and together they'll do a great job of controlling the center from a distance. The game continued with the move bishop to e3, followed by bishop to g7, and then queen to d2. This sequence of moves allowed the king to castle quickly to the queen side, ensuring safety and connecting the rooks for the next phase of the game. In this type of chess game, where black is trying to fianchetto their dark squared bishop, it is usually the case that the player with the white pieces wants to castle long, meaning to castle on the queen side, in order to launch a strong attack against the opponent's kingside castling. In what kinds of chess openings does this situation typically occur? It happens in the Pirc defense, which is also sometimes called the King's Indian defense, in the Sicilian dragon variation, and in all those openings where black is aiming to fianchetto their dark squared bishop. So the game continued with the move c6, just as we were discussing. Does this move allow black to control the center of the board? And it also allows the queen an escape route along this diagonal here. The game continues with f3, which is regarded as a theoretical move in this particular type of setup. What this move allows is not only to further reinforce the e4 square, but also to further strengthen this g4 square, which is extremely important for the jump, for example, of the knights, or even, in the future, the bishops. Many of you are probably thinking, well, but this f3 is actually blocking the development of the knight. This knight will be able to come out via e2 without any problem, whether it's before or after the light squared bishop. b5. What Topalov is trying to tell us here is something, right? You're going to castle long, so I'm going to launch a strong attack on the queen side to try to checkmate you. That's the kind of analysis we need to do when they launch an attack on one side. So Kasparov says, you know what? If I see that you're attacking me hard on the castling side, I'm going to try to hold off on castling for a bit and first develop my pieces. Otherwise, I might decide to castle, and you could very quickly and aggressively attack me too strongly. Knight now moves to bd7, and then the bishop goes to h6. A typical maneuver, right? To exchange our bishop for the fianchettoed bishop. This queen and bishop battery maneuver is actually very common when we face a strong fianchetto setup from our opponent on the board. Now, with this move, it's true that Topalov exchanged these bishops. Normally, if the king were castled, we wouldn't want to exchange, right? We would want to wait for white to capture so we can recapture with the king. Why? Because if we're castled and we capture here, the queen comes in very strongly. Do you see it? It's hard to drive her out, and she controls our castling very well. On the other hand, if here we are not castled and the bishop is fine, it doesn't matter if we capture here because the king is not yet castled. And I'll tell you something, we're going to try to castle on the queen side. Even if it's advanced, it's absolutely fine. The king will live well there. It would be much worse to live on these squares here, where the queen has too much control. As a subscriber told me, I'm going to leave the captured pieces here on the side. If you want, I'll leave some on each side, so that you yourselves, from the comfort of your own home, can very easily keep track perfectly as the pieces are captured. I thought it was a great idea, so that's what I'm going to do. The game continues with bishop to b7 a3. As you can see, this is a waiting move because they don't want to castle right away, since the attack would likely be very strong. So why play a 3 then? It's not played just for the sake of it. The idea is quite clear. It is to prevent any possible pawn advances that could potentially start to bother or disturb all of the pieces that will be responsible for defending our long castle. I'm going through this part a little bit faster than usual because the true brilliance of Kasparov's game will begin to shine in just a few moves from now. Even so, we can still learn a great deal from all of these opening moves and the strategies behind them. You already know that my main goal is to bring you the truly challenging and thought-provoking aspects of World Champions games. Thank you. And I always try to make them as simple and easy to understand as possible so that everyone, regardless of their level, can fully grasp and apply those valuable lessons to their own games and improve their play. Topalov broke the center with e5. Alright, most of you are probably already thinking about whether you should capture, advance, or perhaps wondering what exactly to do next. The main idea is that many times, when there's a breakthrough, the best thing to do is simply wait, monsieur. If we capture, we are usually more often than not actually benefiting our opponent. If your opponent offers you a capture, why do you think that is? Because it suits them for you to make the exchange. If you make the exchange, what would happen? Well, simply, they could probably recapture with the pawn, further strengthen the center, weaken this square or this file here, and most likely black would be quite comfortable with all of this. However, what happens then? That it also suits us very well if they capture us. If you capture me, you end up without pawns in the center, you wouldn't have any pawns in this square, now I have 2 and you have 1. So, for example, castling long, which is something I wanted to do, and on top of that I place the rook on the same file that, if you want, can be opened. And now, if I capture moreover, this rook is going to live much better. That is to say, in conclusion, what I'm seeing is that it's much better not to capture and to wait. Not to capture hastily. And believe me, this lesson is one that all of you can apply in your own games. The game continued with queen d7, rook b1, which is always a good move when you castle long. The king is always better on b1 than on c1. Something that happens to me, and I'm correcting it more and more, and that might happen to you as well, is that you focus on looking for the best move around here before playing king b1, when often it's a priority to play king b1 first and then think about everything else. It's true that, in quotes, we are indeed losing a tempo, but many times I have genuinely regretted not having the king on b1, and by then, unfortunately, it's simply too late to put it there. Logically, if I share my mistakes with you, then you probably won't have to make them yourselves. You can learn from my mistakes. The game continues with a6, a very logical move, and I'll explain why. This pawn right here was simply and directly defended by the c-pawn, so any potential break on d5 could be dangerous, because we'd already be attacking the base of this structure. With the move a6, the black pieces reinforce this whole pyramid very well, and the long castling is probably looking safer and safer. Kasparov starts maneuvering with his knights, Topalov castles long, and this knight jumps to the b3 square, which is where he wanted to place it after making this double jump. This has allowed him to place it on a better square than d2, and on top of that, clear the way for the dark squared bishop. Pawn takes pawn, rook takes pawn. Could it have been captured with the knight instead? Yes, there was absolutely no problem at all capturing with the knight. Kasparov simply chose to capture with the rook because he believed the rook would be much more active and effective than the knight in this particular position. It's a move that probably very few of you, this pawn is really driving me crazy, sorry, very few of you would have captured with the rook. I include myself because it's a difficult response. For example, they could play this advance against us and they'd be putting us under a lot of pressure. However, this advance wouldn't actually be very good right away. Why? Because we could simply move the rook back without any problem, and now black has created quite a few weaknesses that, together with our pieces, we can exploit. Why is that? Because the king is a bit weak. Therefore, here with the rook over here, what Kasparov is doing is trying to provoke this advance. Obviously, Topalov does it because it's the most logical move in the world. And after the rook retreats, he improves his knight to b6. Careful, this is certainly not losing for black, not at all. I'm simply trying to explain in detail why Kasparov decided to capture with the rook in order to force this advance and thereby slightly weaken the queenside position. g3, a very interesting move. Why? Because it allows the bishop to develop through this square. Logically, Kasparov doesn't have the idea of giving a check to the king, right? Being the best player or one of the very best players of all time, he's not going to try to give a check just for the sake of it or simply to make a move. His idea here is to improve the bishop, and he sees that on this diagonal, whether it's giving check or not, it controls many important squares on the board. So this bishop on h3, for example, also the queen on f4, cutting across these two long diagonals, and this knight, which could potentially jump to this square here, a 5, which is an extremely weak square, his pieces would suddenly start to make sense and work together in harmony. No. So the game continued as follows. King to b8, the knight immediately moves to a5, attacking the bishop on b7, which quickly retreats to avoid being lost, since it is a key piece for defending the castling. The bishop is placed on h3 anyway, even though it doesn't give check. The central pawn from b moves to d5, and the queen is placed on f4. And what Kasparov has managed to do is to communicate with his pieces and ask them, hey, where would you like to be? This knight, this queen, and this bishop have suddenly positioned themselves almost in their best possible spots. A check is being given, the king steps to the side. And now the final remaining piece, which wasn't doing anything, joins its companion on the two central files. The position is very beautiful, it really is. This pawn advances, and here is where Kasparov's true brilliance begins. Where is this knight going to move? The truth is, there are only two reasonable options, right? To move here or to move there, since jumping forward would be giving away a pawn. Why? Because the knight is being attacked by 3 pieces and is only defended by a pawn. In this case, it's true that after the recapture, perhaps for example with the knight, let's suppose it's captured with this knight or that one, it doesn't matter, and then recaptured with the pawn. It couldn't be recaptured because that would create a discovered attack on the queen and it would have to move away. That's true. However, this lone pawn here would be very easy to capture in the long run. Do you know where Kasparov moved the knight? That's right, he went straight into the lion's den. And here is where his masterpiece begins. It's clear that he's probably going to lose this pawn. Knight takes and pawn takes. The idea is that now, logically, you can't recapture because the queen is being threatened. Many of you might be thinking, can you then play knight takes pawn while the queen is being threatened? Since that would lead to a queen exchange, but this would be a mistake. Let me explain, because after capturing, the rook would capture with check. Then the knight would be forced to capture the rook or the king would have to move, but this queen could never be captured. So here, quite simply, Topalov decided to move his queen away. Logically, a good move. You can pause the video at this point if you would like to try to find the absolutely brilliant move that Garry Kasparov discovered here, which of course was not queen takes queen, meaning it was not just a simple queen exchange. I'm going to give the answer right now. The move was rook takes pawn. Rook takes d4, double exclamation mark, a spectacular move. He gives up the rook, but in exchange for what? Chess fans, is taking this rook the best move black has? According to the engines, yes. Because the engines can defend against everything, but you'll see that it's practically impossible to defend against the attack Kasparov is about to launch. So the most human and logical move would be to play king to b6, and that would lead to a very equal position, right? Logically, Topalov calculated much further ahead and saw that this pawn capture for a rook was favorable. Do you know what Kasparov did? He gave up the other rook. Rook to 7, and not only does he give up one rook, he gives up both. This rook is truly untouchable, and I'm going to show you why. If black decided to capture this rook, then queen takes d4 would follow on the board, and at this point this would be checkmate in just a few moves. The king would have to go, for example, to b8, and then the game would continue with queen to b6, and when the bishop blocks, knight to c3 and queen to a7 would follow, and this would end in a totally brutal checkmate. So we come to a conclusion. It's clear that this rook, let's put things back as they were. It's clear that after this sacrifice, It can't be captured. So after this check, Topalov didn't capture this second rook, but instead played the correct move, king to b6. Alright, how does the attack continue? Kasparov played queen takes d4, now sacrificing this knight here. Don't tell me this isn't a work of art and that you're not enjoying it, because it's spectacular. He gives away a rook, gives away the other, and now gives away this knight, which, logically, there's nothing better to do than capture it. How does the game continue with the attack? First, he comes in with the pawn to give this check to the king on b4, the king escapes, and now the threat is this one here. Queen to c3, a very good move. What does it threaten? Surely all of you are seeing it. Queen to b3, checkmate. So how can the player with the white pieces avoid this? There's only one move works to cover this square here, and that's to capture this pawn here. Either with the bishop or with the queen. Be careful. If it's captured with the bishop, that would be a huge mistake and would end in checkmate in just a few moves. King to b2, and absolutely no one can possibly stop this mate right here. No one at all can stop it right now. And that is simply unstoppable. No matter if the queen is sacrificed, the pawn would recapture and deliver mate. The correct move, which is what Topalov played, is queen takes pawn. And let me explain why. The idea is that now it's true that this mate is being defended, but Kasparov, is he threatening another mate? First he threatens one and then he threatens the other. Don't tell me this isn't spectacular. The only way to stop this mate is with the bishop. If this bishop were here, it couldn't defend both mates at the same time. Do you get it? So this bishop takes care of this mate and this queen takes care of the other mate. Spectacular. Well, I'll capture this bishop. It's completely free. It's true that I'm down material, but for now I capture a bishop, and that's something, right? From here on out. Can this queen capture the rook? Logically no, because then checkmate would come. This queen is busy defending against the other checkmate. So, well, what Topalov says is, I'll come back, play h4, and propose a queen exchange. In that case, Topalov would be super happy with this queen trade, right? Let's imagine that we're the ones playing the white pieces. Do we want to trade queens? No, why? Because first, we're down material, and second, we have more attacking chances. These two are the keys to knowing whether we want to trade queens or not. You can listen to them again if they weren't clear, alright? Just rewind the video. These are the two key points we should always consider whenever we think about trading queens. So, well, Kasparov does the following. He captures this knight, but little by little he recovers material and now threatens this checkmate with the queen. Impressive. How do you defend against this checkmate? Well, there's no other move but king takes a 6. Why? Because any other possible move in this position would end with the queen capturing the pawn, resulting in checkmate. Many of you might be wondering, wouldn't it be possible, chess, to bring the rook over to defend? Well, no, that wouldn't really be possible, because then queen to b6 would follow, and now the attack is absolutely devastating and extremely powerful. For example, if they try to come, I imagine over here to this particular square, then simply queen to 5 would be checkmate, ending the game immediately. So, it's clear that it's not possible to block this checkmate here in this position. With the rook, the only move is to try to escape with the king. So now, when white captures, as they did in this position, they actually have an escape route by capturing this pawn, as you can see. Very good. Can you imagine that Kasparov calculated all of this? Well, yes, Kasparov did calculate all of this. And Karpov too. But here, he said after the game that he didn't calculate this brilliant move. c3. Sometimes it's not necessary to calculate the variation all the way to the end. In fact, it's practically impossible. We simply have to trust our intuition. We know we have a good attacking position, so let's trust that we'll find possible moves to continue our attack. Why is this pawn advance so good? You can't capture with the queen. Why is that? Because then it would simply be queen takes b5, and that would be mate. Do you see it? So, logically, you can't do that. Capture this pawn with the queen. It must be captured with the king. Another very bad move, for example, would be to try to escape with the king, because then the queen would be lost. So the only move is to capture with the king. And how did the game continue? First there was this check with the queen, and the king moved away. Another check with the queen to force this king onto the first rank, and if possible onto white squares, because we have the white squared bishop. And now comes a move that I love from this game, one of my favorite moves. You can pause the video to see if you can find it, because I'm about to reveal it. We're going to try to bring this bishop into the attack, and how? With this move right here, threatening the queen. This queen can't leave this diagonal. What would happen if this queen, for example, leaves the diagonal? Simply the queen moves to c1, checkmate. So the queen can't leave this diagonal. So it only has one option, right? To capture the bishop. But what would happen if it captures the bishop? Friends, simply queen to c2 would come, the king would have to move, the rook would come in, and on the next move it would be mate. So this bishop can't be captured either. What can black do here? Well, they tried a very interesting move. Rook to d2. Let me think for a moment. So now if I take the queen, what would happen? Well, it would simply be a queen exchange. Rook takes on b2, and this would be a completely equal game. Let's put this back the way it was. So this move tells Kasparov, either you play perfectly or watch out, because I might turn the game around. But here Kasparov found this brilliant move, rook to d7. This game is one to watch over and over again, don't you think? With just one analysis, you probably won't really get enough, but the good thing is you can put it on the TV and watch it perfectly. Rook to d7. What is this move hiding? Logically, it doesn't allow you to capture the queen because it's a pinned piece. Does it allow you, for example, to capture the rook? That's what Topalov did. What other moves are there here? For example, what would happen if I take this bishop? Rook, king, sorry, queen to d2. No, wait, easier. Queen takes d2, checkmate, right? There are so many variations that sometimes it's hard to keep track of them all. So the only option to save himself is rook takes rook, which is what Topalov did. And the game continued with bishop takes queen. Logically, the material here is now equal. Why? Because it's two rooks against the queen, but the key detail is that this rook on a8 is being attacked by the queen. So, queen takes rook. As you can clearly see, the material advantage here is absolutely overwhelming. Although Topalov continued to play several more moves, Kasparov simply stopped him in this way. He brought the queen back to defend his position, and now he just left his pawns, which, importantly, can't be attacked in any way at all. No matter how much Topalov tried to fix or improve the position, Kasparov simply brought in his king, and here, at this point, there was simply nothing more that could be done. The game. It ended with this absolutely brilliant move. You can't capture this pawn, because if you do, there's a check, and then I take the rook. So here, black's pieces really can't do anything at all. The queen is going to come in, take this pawn, and if black tries to resist, the rook will be taken. Then after that, the queen could start capturing these pawns, and there are 3 passed pawns that are going to promote, which is just overwhelming. Brilliant or not, this game, well, if you want, you can always watch this video again to see all the details. Leave me a like if you enjoyed it, and let me know your thoughts in the comments. And for all of you who want even more content, subscribe to my free newsletter, which I send out regularly with updates, tips, and exclusive material. By the way, I've prepared something really special that will absolutely fascinate you, and it will be available starting in November, which by the way is almost here, so you won't have to wait long. So if you subscribe to the newsletter, you'll get special benefits, early access, and some surprises as well. I hope you enjoyed this video. To subscribe to the newsletter, you'll find the link in the description or by visiting Chess Teacher web. And I'll see you in the next video, friends. Goodbye.